Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode 256 of Real Blend, a podcast that will be live reacting to the entire 4 hours of Martin Scorsese's new film from our very own private yacht in Cannes. I thought I'd mention it up top. Yeah,
Could you?
So I haven't told you guys yet.
Is this? You guys are gonna? I don't know. Maybe it's blasphemy for a movie podcast. But if we were going to Cannes and we could only watch one movie, I'd rather watch Indy.
I don't know that that's blasphemous. It looks really good, or it looks really interesting, I should say. But
that's a tough call.
That's a tough call.
Because what are the chances that like the cut that's the Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, like that's not going to be the final cut?
Well, that's what makes it more interesting then.
Okay.
Because I'd almost rather see because I mean, again, they must know Indy's great if they're releasing it. If they're
I don't know. They put Crystal Skull premiered at Cannes as well.
Did they?
Yeah.
Did they have reactions out of Crystal Skull at Cannes?
I can't remember. I don't know. I mean, that was what 2008.
Wow.
So I don't know. I don't seem to remember. But also don't forget, like initial reviews for Crystal Skull were not horrible. Like it really wasn't until like more mainstream audiences started coming out and seeing it, and then we all sort of went. I mean, I gotta be honest. I remember walking out going like, okay, that's like a 7. I honestly, I know we're off on a tangent now. I still don't hate Crystal Skull. I do not think that there is a bad Indiana Jones movie.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't love Crystal Skull.
Well, maybe we'll come back to that later this year. But on this week's show,
oh yeah,
we're going to discuss
list.
Yeah. We're gonna discuss some box office results for last weekend and some predictions for the big Easter weekend coming up. We're gonna react to the new Barbie trailer, and we're reviewing Mario and Air and Paint. We have 3 movie reviews this week. It's going to be a big one. But joining me this week is Jake Hamilton from Fox 32 in Chicago. How you doing, buddy?
Do you remember that time that when Sean wasn't here and I tried to introduce the show and like the world melted down? Like you would have thought that like I kicked the puppy of every listener. Right. Like you would like it was astounding the negative reaction I got from introducing the show.
I thought you did a great job.
I appreciate you. I'll never do it again.
And that's Fox 5's Kevin McCarthy. How are you doing, buddy?
It is good. Good afternoon to you, Gabriel. Jacob Edward Hamilton. Good to see you both. I only know Jake's middle name because the Twilight thing.
Hey, when you're 18 Twilight movies or Twilight junkets in, you start digging for question material. Kevin knows we were running out of material by the end of that junket.
And ever since Jake last hosted, now I bear the brunt of that because Sean, when you're listening to this, will be in London.
That's so
covering
cool.
This year's Star Wars celebration, which is awesome.
Ooh, I need to text him to get me a shirt.
And he didn't think to invite any of us, so that's kind of a bummer.
Don't forget to get me a shirt.
Perfect.
Boys large.
It's a real text, actually.
Yes, it is a real text.
He's not even kidding. We'll quickly go through housekeeping, and then we will start the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for joining. Please head down, hit subscribe.
Check out Kevin's
hit
haircut.
The like button, turn on your notifications. For our audio listeners, if you'd like to see the show,
listen to Kevin's new haircut.
Listen to my new haircut. Yeah, you can hear it, guys. Listen, hold on.
You can find the show youtube.com/realblendpodcast.
The show gets weird without Sean.
It does. And we are, of course, available wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a premium feed, which you can pay for and get the show ad-free. And you also get a newsletter from Sean, which is dropping this week. And you get an extra segment, a little bonus, a little premium episode every Monday, which Kevin and I will be recording tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. I actually, Gabe, I can't make it tomorrow. It's just going to be you.
Kevin's coming to Napa with me.
This is where this will be my manifesto. It's my manifesto episode.
It's the highest rated episode we've ever had.
I think it's like 10 million views in the first hour.
We always joke that whenever we come up with like a weird episode idea, that it's going to be the highest rated episode ever, and it's going to make us rethink the entire show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't have an interview this week. This is usually where we throw to an interview, but I will say there's a movie coming out this week that maybe down the line we'll have a guest for. That's all I'll say. Hashtag if it happens.
That'd be huge.
Huge. But what we are going to discuss are the box office results from last week. Dungeons and Dragons brought in $37.2 million domestically. As of this recording, which is we're recording on the 5th, It's made $72.9 million worldwide. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that, but I particularly want to hear Kevin's thoughts on this little factoid, this little tidbit, which is that Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves will post the best opening for a film that isn't a sequel since Nope debuted with $44.4 million in July last year.
Interesting.
Still a franchise. It's not a complete original, but
I was about to say that it's like his Nope's a fully original film. That's interesting. Those numbers sound low to me for a film. I mean, I will say though, going into the weekend, I think it did overperform because I think tracking got lower. As and I could be wrong, but I think it got lower as it. I don't know about lower, but I think that they tried to manage the tracking a little differently as it got closer to release, and then I think it actually exceeded what those tracking numbers ended up being closer to the release date. I mean, it's a really fun movie too, which is really. I hope word of mouth sells it. I hope people actually go out and see it. Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez are great. But that number does sound low. I mean, also considering how much money John Wick 4 made, and I know that's a fourth film in a franchise, but it's also R-rated. It's also almost 3 hours long. And that film, I think, just cost $250 worldwide million. I think its opening weekend, I want to say, was over $130 worldwide. A lot of money. So again, not comparable, but I guess it is interesting to compare the two, considering one's R-rated and one is 3 hours long. And so I don't know. The numbers seem fine to me. I mean, Paramount has had such success recently. I mean,
the studio's doing fine. Yeah.
Huge. I mean, Sonic last year with Lost City, Top Gun, Maverick. I think the Sonic film crushed.
Scream franchise killing it.
Scream, Smile. I think Scream just passed 150 million. I think Smile was theirs. That made a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, I think, they're going to have a good summer with Mission and Transformers, and we'll see kind of where they end up. But Dungeons does sound a little on the lower side to me. And now I'm wondering if it'll even break 150, which sounds, that doesn't sound great. I don't know what the budget was, but it seems pretty.
Budget was 150.
So I would imagine. Jake, I don't know if that's going to make money back.
We talk about this kind of around the idea of a franchise and sequels and such. I want to ask you, do you think that it's making enough to warrant a sequel? I know people seem to love the movie, which I think gives it a little bit of cachet.
Yeah, it had amazing reviews, and it had an A- cinema score exit polling on audiences, which is always a good sign. I think this number is the epitome of like, okay, let's wait and see. I was kind of hoping for at least 40. 40 would have been a nice round sort of like, okay, there was interest there. Coming in a hair under 40 is just sort of like, okay, I don't know. I don't know why a million and a half made 30. Such a difference. Oh, wait, I thought it was 38.5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at international. You're right.
Yeah,
30.
Yeah.
You're right.
It was 38.5. I think right now it's the ultimate wait and see. There's really not that much competition
Mario.
But I think that's such a completely different audience.
I don't think it's different.
I get what you're saying, because I have had so many people our age come up to me and go, dude, I'm going to see Mario opening night. And it is, and we'll talk about this later in the show, but it is such a love letter to people our age who grew up watching it. So you're okay. You're right. Mario is much more of a competition than I think maybe I was giving it credit for. That being said, I really hope that the word of mouth gets around on this movie. By no means do I think that a sequel is greenlit yet. I'm a little surprised that the studio didn't do, a lot of times I feel like they'll do that thing where they say, hey, we're so impressed with the performance and how well it's doing that we're greenlighting number 2 now, even though they have no intention of doing it. They do that a lot for TV shows. I feel like after a pilot airs, they go, we're already going to greenlight season 2, and then nothing ends up happening. But they do that, I think, oftentimes to engage interest. It's hard. It's hard to say one way or the other just how good that number is.
It feels lukewarm. It feels lukewarm.
If we get to weekend 2 and the drop off is only 35%, then cool, great, awesome. And the worldwide numbers keep chugging along. I really hope it's one of those movies that we kind of stop talking about and forget about, and then we look up the first weekend of May and go, oh my God, like it made that much money while we weren't talking about it. I hope that that's the case. I really do.
Yeah, it's really an awesome film. And
if you haven't seen it, please.
I do think they should have just called it Dungeons and Dragons. I think the title's a little long.
Well, they're setting themselves up for sequels.
Yeah, I guess it reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean. I remember when Pirates of the Caribbean came out, it was just supposed to be pirates. And then I had that same thought, like Pirates of the Caribbean, like Dead Man's Chest. Now it with, 5 of them? Now it makes sense because you can kind of differentiate each one. And it's
I assume for Pirates, very much like the Harry Potter-ification of that, as a franchise, which I guess
means
sense.
we're gonna get a TV show made around it soon.
Exactly.
Yeah, which I have absolutely no idea how they're going to do that without Daniel Radcliffe. I don't know. I know it's a prequel series, but anyway, that's a whole other discussion. But
I don't know enough about that.
No, it's my understanding. No, my understanding is that it's going to be 7 seasons, and every season is going to be one of the books. So basically, we're going to get like a very in-depth, which like for the latter books makes sense to me, but I don't understand how you're going to get like 10 episodes out of Sorcerer's Stone. They pretty much, I don't know. There are people who listen to this show that know Harry Potter way more than I do, but I have read the books. And from based on what I remember, they like the first couple of movies, they get a lot in. I guess I wouldn't start being really interested in a more in-depth Potter story until we at least hit the 3rd book, Prisoner of Azkaban.
Could you imagine the actor who's going to have to play Harry Potter?
It just seems so odd.
I know, it's like it's different, like
especially because everyone wants him to come back to play older Harry,
which I think is going to. I think that's going to be the next generation.
Yeah, but now you have a whole generation of people who are going to see a new Harry. This is a different discussion.
I feel like Cursed Child is going to be the next generation's Force Awakens.
Well,
where like they're like, oh my God, they like in 20 years, well, like once they're old enough to like, which congratulations to Daniel Radcliffe just announced that they're expecting their first child, but like he needs to be old enough where like the kids are like 10 years old or something like that. I haven't seen the play again.
And also congratulations to Daniel Radcliffe. He's aging well. He looks very young still.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's going to be a long time until he looks choices. Yeah, exactly. Yes. I do love him.
Which I think I've talked about it on the show, so I don't want to dive too much into it, but like the plot I had a buddy of mine, he and his girlfriend were just in New York and went and saw part 1 and 2 back to back. And for the first time, he told me what the plot of Cursed Child is. And it's fantastic. Like it was the first time where I ever went, oh, I would watch that in a movie in a heartbeat. Like that sounds awesome. But again, we're not talking about just the 3 leads coming back. Like you would need, this is going to sound strange. You would need de-aging on Pattinson. You would need Ralph Fiennes to come back as Voldemort. You would have to recast Alan Rickman as Snape. You would have to somehow bring back the incredible actress who plays McGonagall. There's a lot of factors that go into not just getting those 3 leads back. A lot of things have to happen because you're basically remaking the 4th film.
Now, if Alfonso Cuarón wants to direct this series, I will gladly watch that. I will. Azkaban's my favorite.
I'm gonna pick up the train set, put it back on the rails, and we're gonna round off some box office chat, which I do want to talk a little bit about this coming weekend because it's gonna be a huge weekend. Apparently, it's Easter weekend. The Super Mario Brothers is projected to be the biggest Easter weekend yet. This is according to Box Office Pro.
Are they making a mistake by opening it? We're recording on Wednesday, but I mean, because I feel like that it cuts into the headlines of the weekend.
But I think
let me give the projection real quick. We can discuss the 3-day weekend forecast is 112 million, and then I'm seeing the projected domestic total.
Wait, really?
Through Sunday, they're saying upwards of they're saying 164. The range that they're giving for their 5-day, according to Box Office Pro, that is not what
I was expecting.
Is 150 to 185.
Wow. I was thinking like 50.
Now what do you think about Dungeons and Dragons second weekend?
So they have Dungeons and Dragons projected to take second place with 13.6. John Wick right behind with 13.4 for the 3-day.
What's that drop for Dungeons?
I'm seeing 63. Wow. This is projected as of, let me see when they put this up. I think this was on the 2nd. Or I'm sorry, no, this is today. The 5th.
Wow. Yeah, those numbers are insane. I mean, I will say that's a lot higher than I thought it would be, but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, Mario is a huge brand. People are obsessed with it. It's also not only, this is why Sonic works so well. The people who grew up playing Mario are now taking their kids who are growing up to see it, and both the parents and the kids are experiencing it on 2 different levels. One, the parents are nostalgic. the kids are just because it's a cool animated film and maybe they play Switch and these characters. And I you know,
Mario is ubiquitous.
I said this for a long time, and I people always give me, you know, crap for saying this, but like, I think the N64 system is the best system that was ever created for a video game console. And you could argue the graphics and everything for the PS4, PS5, all the Xboxes, whatever, if you want. But there's nothing, and this is, I don't think this is nostalgia talking. I think this is purely gameplay. There is something about that system and those characters, and you know, the Mario Karts and the GoldenEye, and even Switch kind of brings that back. I know it sounds like it'd be nostalgic because I grew up on it, but there's just something about the playability of those games, and a lot of things these days are almost so hyper realistic that it's almost, you know, it's more cinematic, and which is totally fine. They're performance capturing actors now that are playing, like Last of Us is performance capture. It's very cool stuff. Yeah. But I think Mario just has this lasting effect. And that's why you're seeing numbers like that. It's
well, Nintendo. I mean, Nintendo is the Disney of video games. Like their brand is nostalgia, and their brand is mascots. Like that's.
But it's not even nostalgia.
But no, I'm saying
playability.
No, I'm saying it is because you like N64. The kid who's 8 years old right now likes whatever
Switch.
Mario they put out last year. Like in the same way, that Disney's like, we're making live
the
action.
Original Nintendo.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Duck Hunt still plays, man.
the dual cartridge, the dual game cartridge, where like you chose which one you were playing.
Yeah, do you remember Super Scope? I had this Super Scope for my Super Nintendo. It was like this big, like almost like grenade launcher looking type thing. It was so cool. I still have my Super Nintendo over here and all my games when I was a kid. Like, I'm telling you, like, if somebody were to hand me two consoles, a PS5 and an N64, I would take the N64 in 2 seconds.
You don't play video games though.
But again,
dude, could you imagine a Friday night? Like, tell me this doesn't sound great. It's a Friday night. We don't have a junket. We have nothing to do. I live down the road from you. You have your N64. I say, dude, let's order a pizza. Let's play GoldenEye. No odd job. And no knives. No odd job with knives.
They just re-released GoldenEye. You can play it on the newer consoles. Yeah.
No odd job, sude. There was
that's such a very specific thing for people that grew up with GoldenEye. The fact that we both said no odd job at the same time.
Again, I'm gonna grab the train set. We're gonna go
on
back
the rails right now. We're talking about Mario and why it's gonna do well.
We're talking about Super Nintendo. I do want to.
We're talking about the brand. We're talking about the brand and why those numbers are so high.
I was not expecting that.
But it makes
that's like Marvel. Well, that's what Marvel used to be.
I mentioned this to you before. I think it seems like a perfect storm of the industry being where it's at, where there's still it feels like we're still getting waves of people either coming back for the first time or really just getting back in the habit of seeing movies in theaters. But also, I mentioned this to you guys before we recorded. It's apparently the first animated feature in theaters since December with Puss in Boots, which, I mean, leads you to believe that families are kind of on the edge of their seat. Like, let's get out of the house. Let's get these kids into a theater, which, you know, only makes that number grow, I think. So
it's also interesting looking at Rotten. Again, I don't think Rotten Tomatoes is the end all be all of decision making, but the 55% critical score and the 95% audience score is very telling. I think it's going to have a good cinema score, probably A minus, because I just feel like why Super Mario Brothers is those numbers are so high is because everybody can go see it. Like anybody from the age of 5 till 50 or whatever just to give that perspective. A 50-year-old definitely grew up playing these games, and like there could be double generation. There could be the 50-year-old's kids who have kids at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like the 50-year-old could have a 30-year-old who has a 5-6-year-old, and you're talking that's why I thought Force Awakens was so interesting, because it captured multiple generations of people that were fans that now can take their kids, and it's why Sonic did so well. And I think that's awesome. I mean, we've been saying this for a long time, but movies being back is like it just makes me feel good. And I
this
know
year
that
in particular looks like it's going to be a great year.
Yeah, and last year was great.
Last year was great, but last year was like the first, it took about halfway through before it really felt like it. This year feels like everything's
going.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And then we got some big ones like Barbie is going to crush Oppenheimer, Mission Impossible. That almost sounded like I know.
You said that perfect.
Actually sounded pretty funny. Yeah, isolate that.
I know there's a comma in there, but just that sentence, I'm just going to just lift that sentence out of the show.
I'm not gonna lie. Yesterday, so real quick, like yesterday, so Jake and I have a bet going on that Oppenheimer or Barbie will open up at number 1. They're opening up the same weekend, and I know we're gonna dive into the Barbie trailer in a second.
This is a perfect transition. I'll do it after that.
All right. Well, all right. And so yesterday, when the Barbie trailer dropped, like Jake and I were arguing, like jokingly arguing over text. But then when I opened up my social media and I saw how many people took that poster and put their face on it, I said, I don't know anymore. because listen,
that bomb explosion in Kevin's head just got a little smaller.
There's not a lot of social media interaction for,
for
the guy who invented the
I told again, like our newsroom isn't necessarily a litmus test for how well things do, but I did bring up because everyone in the newsroom this morning was talking about the Barbie trailer, and someone a couple of people in our newsroom listen to our podcast, but someone brought up the bet. And I said, it's funny. I was like, yeah, Kevin and I have a bet which one opens bigger, Barbie or Oppenheimer. And I'm not joking. I'm not saying this because it breaks my way. Like 3 people at one time said, what's Oppenheimer?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, listen, Jake has been on this train for a bit, or train back on the rails.
I don't think Barbie ever had a train. I think she had a Corvette or something. I'm kidding.
But it's interesting. Like yesterday was the first time I realized, and again, I'm still sticking with my Oppenheimer bet because he has the IMAX screens and Nolan. I don't bet against Nolan.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's very close.
Yeah. But to Jake's point,
but I also wouldn't be surprised if Barbie crushes.
I don't know. Like yesterday I was looking at those posters and I'm like, this is like Warner Brothers is brilliant. Like the way
it feels like it's hitting a cultural wave, which is a special thing for a movie.
It feels different. Yeah. And I think, listen, Oppenheimer.
I know,
we'll see.
I mean, maybe almost Mario-like, where like it's going to be a thing where like young kids are going to want to see it, but then also, but like my God, the last scene of that trailer, which is basically like about like guys having a beach off.
So funny.
I lost it, but it's just
We're
like
officially
that's
in trailer reaction now. I didn't.
Yeah, sorry.
It's fine.
But like that was one of those just like, oh my God, that's what kind of movie this is going to be. Where it's just sort of like young kids are going to go see this movie, and then in 20 years they're going to randomly rewatch and go, oh my God, I cannot believe that joke was in the movie and I did not get it.
Well, also, one of the things that's interesting about Barbie, and so again, one of the things that's fascinating, if you're just tuning in for the first time, that Oppenheimer and Barbie are opening up the same day, and so now everyone, like there were so many memes yesterday about like lines of people at the box office where like one person was waiting for Oppenheimer, one was waiting for, and the whole line was waiting for Barbie.
I'm actually really curious about how many people want to see both, because I feel like
the people that
want to see Oppenheimer are the people that would want to see the Greta Gerwig movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
This is the point I made on the show a couple weeks ago. I think Barbie and Oppenheimer are not that far off from each other.
We've discussed that.
Yeah, the argument I made there was that I think Greta Gerwig, while Barbie is what Barbie is, the brand, and like it's incredibly colorful and like and it has a comedic sense to it. We know that she's going to dive into. Greta Gerwig's going to dive into.
We saw a little bit of that finally
themes.
In this trailer. Yeah. In this trailer, like there's this little subtle. It works as like a joke, but it also works as like, this commentary that we're trying to figure out.
The heels.
The heels. When she steps out of the heels, but her feet are stuck in heels, and the idea of sort of, body image and the legacy of Barbie in that regard, of Barbie being posed in heels eternally. And I think
Ken asking to spend the night at Barbie's house, but not understanding why
I actually
he's
don't know. I actually don't know.
Because that sort of feels like a young child, a young boy or a girl, like playing with dolls and like being boyfriend and girlfriend, but like not understanding,
like what does this mean?
Yeah, like there's such a sweet innocence of like, oh, boyfriend and girlfriend, and we're gonna do, but like not knowing anything else. Like I loved that line.
Hot take though, I will say this: I love that trailer. I still like the 2001 one better. I just thought
that 2001 one was tailor made for you.
Yeah. Which is interesting though, if you think about it, because that goes back to the point.
The only way that trailer could have been better is at the end it says this trailer was edited by Christopher Nolan. And you'd be like, well, that's the greatest trailer of all time.
I actually I was thinking about this yesterday because I sometimes I'll daydream and I think about because Greta Gerwig has already proven herself as a phenomenal filmmaker, Lady Bird and Little Women, and I just think that her film language is very similar to the language that we all love as film fans. Like she speaks the same language as Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, Sofia Coppola, and obviously, she's with Noah Baumbach, who's also another incredible filmmaker and storyteller.
Yeah, exactly.
Is Baumbach on this?
Yeah, they both wrote it.
Oh, I didn't know. That's cool. But so one of the things I found interesting about this trailer, like you said, like it dives into the more thematics of the serious themes they're going to dive into. But I think Rodrigo Prieto, if I have his name right, shot this film. Who's I think he shot Argo, and I want to say he's one of Ridley Scott's guys. I'll double check it. But look that up if you don't mind. The cinematography. Thank you, Gabe. The cinematography is incredible. Like it's so colorful. I saw a lot of people comparing it to Truman Show, which is kind of an interesting comparison. This Truman idea Show, of being,
I got SpongeBob movie vibes as well, like going to the real world. Well, that's one thing I like about this trailer is I don't love trailers, and I didn't obsess over like rewatching the trailer certainly, but I still feel like I don't know what's going to happen in this movie. I don't really know what it's about. I know that it's funny. I know that it looks like the performances are awesome. We're getting the kind of humor from Ryan Gosling that I want to get. Getting the kind of humor from
this is like Nice Guys Ryan Gosling.
He looks it looks like it's going to be great, even though I don't know exactly what's going to happen in it, which I think is a perfect way to sell your movie. So
I do have a question. Both Oppenheimer and Barbie are stacked casts. We're talking. I mean, even in the Barbie trailer, when they start listing all the names. Did you remember that part where it's just like dozens of names? Sometimes I get worried when the casts are that stacked that I'm going to have a hard time staying in it because I'll be saying, oh, there's Michael Cera, there's Matt Damon from Oppenheimer.
That's kind of how I felt about Amsterdam.
Yeah, and so I think one thing I would be interested in asking Greta Gerwig if we get her would be about that balance, because because at the end of the day, when you introduce someone super famous, if they're not on screen long enough, you won't have the ability to disconnect. It feels like a cameo. Right.
I think there's going to be a lot of cameos.
And I wonder how much that's gonna, and I guess maybe the tone of the film will have to speak to that, because if it's in a joking way when someone cameos, like with Oppenheimer, for example. Like I read the book, so I'm very interested in kind of who's going like Damon taking on Groves and Florence Pugh taking on Jean Tatlock, and there's so many interesting aspects to it. But I still worry though. I'm like there's so many people in these films. Am I gonna? But then when you go back and look at something like Pulp Fiction, for example, that's just a stacked cast. But it worked differently because like Travolta had kind of been away for a while. Sam Jackson wasn't like super famous yet. I mean, I know I'm mentioning a random film. I'm just thinking about movies that have like incredibly huge casts that have characters that show up. Like Christopher Walken, when he shows up in Pulp Fiction, he's on screen long enough where you go, oh, that's Walken, but then you buy into the character telling the watch story.
It's a different tone. Like when Walken is in that scene, he gets to. It's a scene like that scene.
Sure,
it feels like a dramatic set. Versus in a comedy, and with the way this is kind of
it's a little wink at the camera.
I don't disagree at all. I think it has the is Kate McKinnon.
Can it pull you out?
Yeah. Well, in Oppenheimer, did they say Oppenheimer is going to be 3 hours? Is that official?
Damon said I think that nearly 3 hours.
I think that's
another concern that I have now.
Well, see, I was going to say, well, in terms of the cast. It's a lot more, and obviously you've read the book. It's a lot more stretched out time to bring in these people and let them go. And I'd imagine that the film's going to cover a chunk of time, as opposed to Barbie. I think it can feel, which is fine if it feels like a bunch of cameos, but like it does feel like there's much more of a risk of what you're talking about with Barbie than I think there is with Oppenheimer. Yeah, and just to confirm, what Jake's referring to is Damon was on a carpet for air recently, and someone brought up Oppenheimer, and he said it's nearly 3 hours. He'd seen it. And listen, that at the end of the day, everyone wins that weekend. We got two incredible filmmakers. Oh, this is what I was saying before I got sidetracked in my mind. I was daydreaming yesterday about like Nolan and Greta Gerwig meeting up and showing each other their films, because I feel like that'd be like if Matt Damon's already seen Oppenheimer, Nolan clearly has an assembly cut, or probably close to a finished cut. It comes out in 3 months. I would imagine Greta's film is probably done, if not very close to it. I just imagine like Nolan and Greta getting together and like at like Universal City Walk in LA and just showing each other their films, because I feel like Greta
I don't know. I would love to be a fly on the wall to see those two together, because I'm curious if Nolan's going to get asked. He's going to get asked about Barbie for sure on the press tour for Oppenheimer.
I'm dying to see the interview at the junket where someone asks Nolan about Barbie.
Well, Nolan's actually, so again, this is a complete sidebar, but Josh Horowitz had Nolan on his show once, and Nolan's like he loves movies that you think but he loves MacGruber. Yeah. Like Nolan loves
because
Fast
he's a man
and
of
Furious.
taste and class.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. The point I'm making is that like Nolan is such a serious filmmaker that I just can't imagine him watching MacGruber. And I love MacGruber. It's one of my favorite comedies. I love that movie. But I just can't imagine Christopher Nolan sitting down and watching Fast and Furious, because I just want to know what.
Yeah,
but it's
almost the equivalent of like like Gordon Ramsay going to Taco Bell.
Yeah. But I mean, but it is interesting to me to think about that, because obviously I would imagine Greta's probably a fan of Nolan, and I'm sure he is of her. Yeah. Do you think Nolan's worried? Do you think after yesterday's trailer, here's the thing. So Chris Nolan. Oh no, I know. I'm talking about Chris Nolan is married to an incredible producer, Emma Thomas, who's been producing his films for forever. She's amazing. And I've had the chance to talk to her a bunch of times. She's super nice. But I imagine yesterday when that trailer dropped, I just want to know what was going on in that household. I wonder if Chris Nolan and Emma Thomas were like, what do we think? We have our movie coming out that day, but because yesterday the social media trending for that Barbie thing was so massive, and it was just everywhere, all over my feeds. And I was just thinking to myself, are they worried? Because Oppenheimer is, and I always bring up Dunkirk. Dunkirk came out in the middle of the summer, made $600 million or whatever it was worldwide. And that was telling to the Nolan brand. But Oppenheimer, a 3-hour film, I've argued that it'll beat Barbie, but now I'm a little concerned about my bet choice with Jake, because damn, I just didn't realize I don't think I realized how big that was until yesterday. Yesterday was kind of like an eye opener for me. Did it surprise you guys how big it was yesterday?
No, I thought it was going to I thought it was going to inject itself into the zeitgeist. I would like to. The only adjustment that I would like to make to our bet, because I did insist that we keep it $100, but I will say, can we say that that whoever wins, the money goes to charity of our choice?
Deal. I love that. Perfect. Okay, cool. $100. I'm staying with my bet, because that's just where I'm going to stay on my ground, because I still believe that it could beat it, because it has the IMAX ticket prices. But yeah, yesterday got me a little concerned.
Chicago, you're about to get $100.
You are probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, listen, and I will say this before we move on. I want Oppenheimer to do really well, and I want Barbie to do really well.
Yeah, everybody wants.
But I just still feel the Nolan. I still feel the Nolan power, man. I still feel it.
We're gonna take a break, and on the other side, we have some reviews lined up, including Paint, Air, and the Super Mario Brothers movie. So stay tuned. And we are back. With some reviews this week in movies. And to kick us off, we have Jake discussing Paint. Jake, what the heck is Paint? Is it Bob Ross? Is it not Bob Ross? And is it good?
I genuinely loved this movie. I laughed out loud throughout.
This isn't about the Microsoft app, right?
It's not. Though that's probably after Tetris. That's probably in the making.
Super dramatic.
Yeah.
What filler to use? What color to use for your ink?
So basically, look, you don't have to be a genius to realize that Owen Wilson is basically playing a kind of Bob Ross-like character. He plays a guy named Carl Nargle. It's set.
It's a great
today.
Comedic name.
Yeah, Carl Nargle.
Jake,
just the name.
Is it kind of like Dewey Cox kind of thing?
Not really, because it's very much set in the real world, but just off enough, because there are a lot of aspects about it that make you feel like it's set in the 80s, but it's very much set today. So basically, it presents this idea that I want to say it's Vermont in the Northeast, in this sort of this small television market. This local PBS station has this painting show hosted by Carl Nargle that is a phenomenon. Like it is like he is a local rock star. In the opening, he's wrapping up a painting, and it cuts to like different like bars and retirement homes where people are gathered around the TV watching it and all like not people are painting along with him, and he's just this local legend. But the thing is that like he kind of paints the same thing over and over again, and so there's this illusion that he's just like this genius. But all of a sudden, the local PBS says, look, we need to like splash up the ratings. We need to get a little controversial. So they bring in a second painter to have a second painting show come on after Carl, who paints a lot more evocative stuff than streams and forests and mountains. She paints UFOs with blood coming out of them. And then she just becomes the local rock star. And he just can't handle it. He can't comprehend. So he just unravels. And in this unraveling, you realize that this picture perfect local celebrity that is Carl Nargle maybe wasn't the picture perfect celebrity that we all thought he was. Maybe there was a lot more to it. So it ends up being actually a much, I don't want to go as far as saying a dark comedy, but a much darker comedy than I was expecting it to be. And it presents this really interesting idea, because I feel like so many of us have this image of Bob Ross almost in the vein of like a Mr. Rogers, where he's just this sweet, kind, soft-spoken gentleman. And it presents this idea of like, what would it take to break that person? How much can that person take before they crack and the real them sort of comes out? It's very funny. It's almost, I would put it in the category of like an Anchorman kind of thing, where like you have this local celebrity who can't handle someone else encroaching upon his celebrity. I really enjoyed it. It is genuinely one of my favorite Owen Wilson performances ever. I absolutely loved him in this part. Found myself laughing out loud several times and just really, really, really enjoyed it.
I love that.
Sounds good.
I'm excited to see it. It's one of those things where you're just, based on the trailer, getting a performance like that from Owen Wilson is enough to sign me up.
Yeah, it's an interesting performance in that like it's far enough removed where like it's a really great performance and you forget that it's Owen Wilson, but there's just enough of him in it that like it uses what's great about him as an actor while still being completely different from who he is, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does. That's great. Moving on, we have a new Ben Affleck movie, folks. New, directed by Ben Affleck, starring Matt Damon. Has Matt Damon in it? Kevin, you've seen Air, correct?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Air?
I thought it was fantastic.
I love it.
Shout out to Bob Richardson, who shot this movie. Apparently, he used recut lenses from Ben-Hur to shoot this movie.
As one does.
And because he did something similar on Hateful Eight with Quentin Tarantino. But what's interesting about Air to me is, and Affleck said this in our interview, is basically the idea that he's trying to make a movie that doesn't feel like he's trying to make an 80s movie. It just feels natural to the setting of it. And the way it's shot, the walk and talks, the conversations, the intensity of Matt Damon and walking through the offices, or Jason Bateman walking through the offices. It's so intense and just fascinating. Also, Affleck made an interesting comparison. And again, he wanted to clarify that this was not a comedic intention, but they don't show Michael Jordan in the film. Outside of stock footage, it's from behind or from the side. You never see the actor's face who plays him. And he compared it to like that opening of Austin Powers where they're covering him.
That's such a great comparison.
Yeah, and if you don't remember, like that was like a scene in Austin Powers where like was it Elizabeth Hurley in that scene? I'm trying to remember who that was in that scene, but someone's covering.
See, my mind goes to Austin Powers 2 in the opening montage, where it's after Elizabeth Hurley blows up, and then he goes, "I'm single again," and then he's dancing through wherever they were on their honeymoon.
The one I'm thinking about is the one with like the fruits and the food, and they're in the hotel room.
I think that's I think we're thinking the same thing. I think that's when they're on their honeymoon, the opening of 2, and then she explodes, and the whole sequence is him dancing naked through.
Right. And so Affleck basically used that as a comparison to how they were able to block it and shoot it, and the idea of not showing his face, how the actors had to maneuver or block themselves in a sequence with him. And I think it's a really smart idea because it added to this mythical aspect of who Michael Jordan is. And even Matt Damon says that, essentially when you cast somebody like Michael Jordan, it could take you out of the film. And this story is so insanely awesome. It's just a really crazy story. I didn't know about it. It took place in 84, Jake, I think. Converse and Adidas were like the heads of, shoes for the NBA, and, Nike really, really wanted Michael Jordan, or they needed somebody. They needed something to put their name out there, and they built a shoe around Michael Jordan, the Air Jordan. And it's interesting because, like, when you're watching the film, like these are moments that you remember, these names, but I didn't know the exact details that led to it, the conversations. And Viola Davis is amazing in it. I read this the other day, and I want to make sure I get this name right. Do you know Viola Davis's husband in the film is her real husband in real life?
Yeah. Yep.
Is it Julius? What's his last name?
I'll look for you.
I want to make sure I get that right. But Viola Davis's actual husband is playing her husband in the film, Michael Jordan's father. And I know
Julius Tenen.
He's an actor. I just wanted to give him a shout out because
he's phenomenal.
The parents are great. The parents
His delivery of the line, "Oh, here we go," is so great.
Yeah. I want to shout them out because, like, to me, the Jordan's parents are really like the heart of the movie, especially Viola Davis. Viola Davis is outstanding. One of her best performances. She's phenomenal. The way she talks with Matt Damon's character, Sonny Vaccaro, essentially goes over to the Jordans to try and get his parents to get Michael to do this meeting. And it's just so intensely well made, great soundtrack, great cinematography, great performances. Again, Matt Damon is so famous, but I forget it's him every time. He's so damn good. Like, he's such a great actor. He really is a great actor, and he plays this character amazingly. Chris Tucker, fantastic. I wish Marlon Wayans had more screen time because I think he's just in that one scene, right, Jake?
Yeah.
But I thought everybody was cast perfectly. Bateman is great in this. Again, and Affleck's great in it. Affleck is a great director. I really think, going back to Gone Baby Gone, which I still think is the best movie he's made in his career. And then I would probably argue Argo, and then this, and The Town. I mean, they're all really great. I mean, Live by Night.
Except Live by Night.
Yeah. But I got to give him credit. He is a great storyteller, and this is a really well-paced and edited and just great storytelling in general. It's just really good filmmaking, and it's just you're locked into it. The best compliment I can give this movie is, even though you know the ending, you're still wondering what's going to happen. You're in that meeting and you're on the edge of your seat, because that's the key to suspension of disbelief. Once you are connected to a story, even though you know the ending, a good filmmaker will keep you on the edge of your seat regardless, because it's also just a fascinating story in general. I knew nothing about the Adidas Converse. I mean, I knew those shoes and what they were and what players were using them, but this was just fantastic. And shout out to Bob Richardson, who shot the film. Sure. I knew that was a big deal for Affleck to get him. So I loved Air. It's a crowd pleaser. It's a really, really fun film to see in theaters. It is R-rated. I will point that out, because it is actually, it feels like a movie you haven't seen in a long time, like a classic, great storytelling, just really good film.
Jake, your thoughts on Air?
Yeah, I mean, I just repeating everything Kevin said, but it's just, and sounds like such a dismissive compliment, and it's not supposed to be, but it's such an easily watchable movie. Like, it's just,
it feels
just 2
like
hours
digestible.
just flies by, and it's just, I mean, like you said, everyone plays their part perfectly. It's an enjoyable story. I just really had a great time watching it. I did not realize that a movie about competing shoe companies could be so entertaining. And he makes it, like Kevin said, in such a way that, like, you're like, well, but also, like, there were just so many different small details about the story and that place in time, because I think when so many of us were growing up, Nike was already just so dominant. So, like, it's so fascinating to, be taught about a world that older audiences will remember, but maybe we don't, where, like, Nike was strong. I mean, at that time, they were a runner's shoe. They were dominating in the, with runners, but they were so dismissed when it comes to basketball, which now seems crazy to think. Right. And it's just, these stories of people seeing genius when everyone didn't, it really kind of, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but it kind of makes you look at your life differently, where you just want to go, like, you know what, maybe I do want to double down on this belief that I have where everyone else is doubting me. Maybe I do want to do this.
Did you know about the different? I didn't know the story about the Nike paying fines for the color of the shoe.
Yeah, that's there's a whole concept of that the shoes had to have a percentage of white
51.
on them. Yeah, to be 51% white, and one of the ways that Nike, I don't want to ruin too much, but there's a whole there's so many little details like that where I go, oh, that's interesting. Like that's it. Here's what I'll tell you. Whenever I see a movie like this that intrigues me so much, the first thing I do is I look up books. Like I want to read. There's a book by Phil Knight that makes me want to like. I want to go. Yeah.
Apparently, it's a great book.
So
I've never read it.
Yeah, the character that Ben Affleck plays wrote a book about not just the Jordan era. My understanding is it's the entirety of Nike's story. But honestly, it makes me want to read it.
That's fascinating to me. Yeah, I learned a lot, and I was so. And Jake makes a great point. It's digestible.
Yeah.
It's just a movie that works.
And it's the kind of movie that like, it doesn't matter who you recommend it to. They're going to like it. Like, I feel like I can tell my parents to go watch. I can tell my boss to go watch. I can tell you guys to go watch. Everyone's going to love it. Yeah. Everyone's going to love this movie.
Like you're 100% right. There's nobody that I would send this movie. Like my brother is very picky about his movies. If I told him to watch this, he would be floored.
Yeah.
It is just one of those. And I was just looking earlier. I want to say it has like both the audience and the critical ratings are in high 90s, like over 95%, both. I think they're more than 98% or something like that.
This could be, we're talking about word of mouth movies. This could be a
96 and 98.
This could be a massive word of mouth. And I think it's very smart on Amazon's part not to put it on Prime. They haven't even announced, as far as I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, they have not announced a Prime
yet, last
date.
I saw.
So props to Amazon for believing in this movie, recognizing what they have, and saying, look, we'll put it out when we put it out. But for now, if you want to see it, you got to pony up. Because it's worth it.
I hope they keep doing that. I hope Apple does that. I'd love if Netflix does that. Yeah.
Yeah, Napoleon, Ridley Scott's.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't do it for Tetris, though, right? Tetris didn't have any.
They didn't.
No.
But shameless plug, when we had Sir Ridley Scott on our show, if you go back and listen to it, it's a great interview. He was
really great.
He loved Jake's questions particularly.
I forgot about that.
I was just messing. But they were actually great questions that I wanted to know the answers to.
They were good questions. He just didn't
come on,
engage.
man, answer this.
He just didn't really engage with them the way we wanted to.
I'm almost certain he was making or working on Napoleon while we were talking.
I think he mentioned that. He was talking about one of his answers. He was talking about, he's like, oh, I make these so fast because I'm on this, I'm sending people to do this. And
they shot that already, right?
I think
so.
Wrapped. Yeah, because he's about to start pre-production on Gladiator 2.
And
Gladiators.
I want to say today or yesterday, they wrapped Joker 2.
Did they wrap?
Which was Todd Phillips.
I wish there are so many aspects of that movie that I've already seen through leaked set photos that I wish
Joker?
I didn't know. Yeah, like there's one thing in particular,
the Gaga thing on the stairs.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't seen that.
That bothered me too. That bothered me. I was like, wait a second, because now anyway. So what we're referring to is people have been putting out photos online, and these have been everywhere. But there's like a photo of Gaga on the staircase, which looks the same.
It's the staircase.
It's the exact same staircase. Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want to know that. I really don't want to know that information. But it's out
let's
there.
We're gonna round out this segment of the show with Jake's review of the movie of the week, which is the Super Mario Brothers movie, and I feel like we're gonna go 3 for 3.
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, man. 90-minute runtime from the opening scene all the way to the end. I just had such a massive smile on my face. Oftentimes when three grown men have to review an animated film, I feel like there are so many different prisms you need to look through it. You need to look at it as like, okay, who is this movie made for, which is children, and are they going to enjoy it?
I would argue it's made for everybody. But
sure, but I think I do think that, like, first and foremost, they have to make sure
the priority, they're hitting that kid demo,
the priority is to make sure that kids are happy, and then 100%. How else can we appease older audiences who grew up with these characters and grew up with the original consoles? There were so many jokes in there and references and little things that, like, I felt so much of it was made for me and people my age. I grew up with my sister's, gray original console. There's a moment in the film where Mario walks by an antique shop and you can hear someone inside say, "You just got to blow on it," and then you put it back in. Like little things like that,
which by the way doesn't work.
It actually makes it worse because of the moisture. Yeah.
I used to do it all the time.
Yeah, everyone did. They say it didn't work, and yet it did. So I don't know.
You're right though, because the game wouldn't work.
And then you blow it and the game works.
What was working is you were turning it off and turning it back on.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true. But there are so many like little, just. And here's funny. The major complaint that I've seen is that, there's no story to it. But to which I want to say, well, one, I think there is. Like, Luigi is kidnapped, and Mario and Princess Peach and Donkey Kong and the rest of the gang have to go rescue him, which is sort of a fractured version of the original game's plot, which is that Princess Peach is captured by Bowser and you have to go rescue her. I'm not really sure what people were expecting or hoping for that wasn't there. I think the animation is beautiful. It is a gorgeously rendered film. There's such a texture to it. I feel like this is the most that this world that I grew up loving has ever been brought to life. It is, and there are so many, like, I feel like it hits the beats of the original game, and there are beats of like Luigi's Haunted Mansion, and of course, obviously there are beats of Mario Kart, and there are even beats where, like, I grew up with a lot of the early games, and then after a certain point, obviously kind of stopped playing them. I'm sure there are other things that have nothing to do. There's it kind of name checks a lot of the things in some of the games that maybe made no sense. There's a point where he has to wear like that bear costume, which I believe is from Super Mario 3 on the original Nintendo console. And there's even a point where it's like, why are you wearing the bear suit? Like that makes, so I loved this film. I thought the vocal performances were phenomenal. I know a lot of people were a little nervous about Chris Pratt, but I thought his Mario was perfect. I love Charlie Day's Luigi. I think MVP's got to go to Jack Black, who I think is vocally unrecognizable as Bowser. So I genuinely loved this film. It tapped into my nostalgia. It entertained me for 90 minutes. I thought it was funny. I thought it was smart. I thought it was drenched in references for people who loved these games as an adult. And then there are so many things that our kids are going to enjoy. If I'm a parent who brings their kid to see this movie, I am ecstatically happy walking out because I know the kids are going to enjoy it, but I'd imagine that the parents will as well. So I love this movie to pieces. It's probably the most I've loved an animated movie in a long time. Yes, I have been shamefully admitted that nostalgia works on me. I am addicted to the drug that is nostalgia.
Well, I mean, it's slated to make almost $200 million.
Yeah, so I'm not the only one.
It's what happens.
Yeah. So I count me in as a glowing fan of this movie. I thought it was fantastic. I would watch it again in a heartbeat.
I'm excited to see it. I have not seen this one yet, but what you said that hits me most, and I'm curious if our audience agrees with you or if they agree with me in that this helps their excitement, is that the cast is not distracting. That was my biggest concern.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, I think a lot of people's concern was like, am I just going to hear this? And that's kind of a larger discussion about like, instead of hiring voice actors.
Key as Toad, like I had no idea. Like I still can't wrap my brain around how Toad's voice comes out of Keegan-Michael Key. Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear it.
It's genuinely it's not actors showing up. Okay, here's the one thing I'll tell you.
Okay.
And it actually works. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Donkey Kong sounds like Seth Rogen.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, but like in a weird way, like it kind of makes sense. Like I ended up being okay with it. That's the only character that sounds like the celebrity who voices them.
Yeah, like I said, that's a different conversation about animated movies in general. It's been a long discussed thing about like Hollywood's not hiring voice actors to do really cool, interesting, original voices. They're hiring famous people to sound like famous people on their animated characters, which I don't always love. But if it works, it works. So, folks, you have a long list of movies to see this weekend. It sounds like not enough. You went and saw Dungeons and Dragons, so you got to see that. Yeah. Paint is good enough and it's worth your time. Air sounds like it's phenomenal. And now you have to see Super Mario Bros.
What a good run.
Go see John Wick again. I mean, just go to the movies. Stay at the movies. Live at the movies this weekend.
I saw John Wick again. It was.
Did you?
It's so awesome.
I'm hoping I can go with like a friend. It's hard for me to go to a movie again, without introducing it to someone. So I'm hoping I can go with somebody who hasn't seen it yet. But we're going to take another break. And on the other side, Sean sent in his segment for our blend game this week.
Ooh.
So he'll kind of be on the show this week, and then we'll wrap things up. So we'll be right back. And we're back, and we're kicking off the blend game. This week is hashtag video game movie blend. I tasked the lovely folks who listen to the show, as well as these gentlemen, with coming to the table with your favorite video game movie adaptation. It's a mouthful, but a fun one. Jake, why don't you, or actually Kevin, Jake, you've been talking for a hot minute.
Jake,
here.
shut the hell up.
I'll let you rest for a second. Drink some water. Kevin, what is your pick for video game movie blend?
Yeah, I mean, like famously, the whole bit is that video game, no pun intended with the bit, but video game movies, video game movies are generally looked down upon. But
until very recently,
yeah. And obviously with Last of Us, which is not a movie, but that's an excellent example of a great adaptation. But it's also material that warrants cinematic nature.
It's the best story ever told in video games.
Yeah, and so one of the things. I was thinking about this recently because there's one that I go to when I think about video game movies that I thought was one of the first times I saw a video game film that actually caught my attention in a positive way and in a great way, which was Tomb Raider with Alicia Vikander.
Oh, interesting.
And I
remember underrated, man.
Yeah, it's so underrated.
That movie is so much, and I don't mean to put down another movie, but that movie is so much better than Uncharted.
Oh yeah,
like that movie understands that it's
Uncharted, but
I enjoyed Uncharted, and and that's fine. But it felt like it didn't do what that Tomb Raider does. Not to step on your pick, which is make a really great adventure movie first.
Yeah,
and that felt like a great globetrotting adventure movie.
The biggest thing for me with Tomb Raider, which is pretty simple, what I'm going to say is that I just thought it was cool that they showed the character getting hurt. Yeah, and what I mean by that is like. You would see this character in an action scene, and Alicia Vikander talked about this in the interviews, where like you would actually see this character taking like the action, like and actually physically being affected by the action. It didn't feel like it was a superhero. It felt like it was a person dealing with these circumstances. Actually, like I always point to one of my favorite scenes in Bob Odenkirk's Nobody, and I bring that up because. When you watch films that deal with a character who's, taking out a bunch of bad guys, there's something vulnerable about the idea of seeing that character get hurt in a way that actually makes it believable that they can overcome the circumstances. So like when you watch the scene in Nobody on the bus, when he's fighting those bad guys and he sits in that seat and just kind of topples down, it adds a certain levity and groundedness to the moment that makes it so much more believable and impactful. You could argue that even with John Wick, while he takes out multiple people, there are moments of him like getting hurt, falling, getting hit by things. And again, that's a little more superhero-esque that I would argue sometimes than more grounded. But going back to Tomb Raider with Alicia Vikander, I was just blown away by it. I didn't expect it. I was like, okay, it's another video game movie. I played this game growing up. We've seen Angelina Jolie play the character before. I don't know. There's something. Well, also, both Angelina and Alicia Vikander are phenomenal actors. But Alicia Vikander brought a grounded nature to that character that was cinematic. It took it beyond the game, and it gave it a certain level of groundedness where I was believing it, and like just the sounds of the action, the way that the character would move, and I remember talking to her specifically about the way she would fall or the way she would get hit, and how that was supposed to be realistic. You were supposed to feel like relentless, like you're supposed to feel like you were almost exhausted, because you were on the journey with the character, and the action set pieces were great. I think it's a really underrated movie. I really do. I remember really digging it and going, wow, this is shockingly good. Because the video games movies didn't have a bar to be set, really. It was just like things over the years weren't great. I think the closest thing that came to that for me was the first Sonic. Very different reasoning for that, but I thought Sonic did a really good job of especially because Jim Carrey brought a great perspective to that character, but especially with Ben Schwartz playing Sonic. But overall, I got to go with Tomb Raider. If you haven't seen it, it came out in 2018, kind of fell under the radar. It wasn't critically acclaimed really that well. But it was
they officially
good.
I know they were working on a sequel for a while. Is that still happening?
So.
I feel like I've been hearing back and forth.
Yeah,
but did it do well? I'll look this up while you guys move on. But I just remember
we can talk about it right now before we move on.
I just remember let me look at the box office for it.
I seem to remember it being underwhelming.
I feel like immediately they were discussing a sequel, but I don't know if that's just.
If you had to guess how much it made without me telling you, what would you think?
Domestically or worldwide?
Worldwide.
250?
I was going to say 250.
274, which is not bad. Now the budget on the website says, on Box Office Mojo says 94,
which is not bad for a big adventure movie.
You count P&A, you probably had to clear, let's say 160. Just throwing it out there. It sounds like it made profit.
But it's from Warner Brothers. So I wouldn't be surprised, if Warner Brothers in 2018, they've changed a lot of hands. So,
but that movie is awesome, and I'm glad it exists. And I think Vikander's phenomenal in it, and it's really just kind of an underrated action gem. So for me, that's my pick.
Before we get to your pick, Jake, I'm going to look and see. Do they have? Yeah, I don't see it on Alicia Vikander's upcoming on IMDb at least.
Am I saying her name right? Isn't it Alicia? Am I saying that
Alicia?
Wrong? I want to make sure. Hopefully, I don't know. I said it a bunch just now during this topic. So for people listening, if I got it wrong, I apologize. I'm pretty sure it's Alicia Vikander.
We should ask Sean, and then whatever he says, it's the opposite.
Yeah, let's ask Sean. Jake, what is your favorite video game movie adaptation?
I'm gonna go with look. I hate picking a recent movie, but I love this movie to pieces. I'm going with the 2021 Mortal Kombat.
Oh, nice.
I loved
it's great.
That movie. Yeah. I loved the fight sequences. I thought the artistry behind it. I thought the bringing of the characters into the real world was phenomenal. I loved the R-rated violence. I mean, if you're going to accurately
can't have a Mortal Kombat that's really
with PG-13. Yeah. Now, granted, there is a very solid argument for the fact that there is no actual Mortal Kombat tournament in the first Mortal Kombat movie, which is true.
Oh yeah.
But they did just greenlight a sequel, which I'm enthusiastically excited for. Right. But so this feels almost like a great prequel setup to the tournament. But my God, that Sub-Zero Scorpion fight amazing. at the end, everything. It was
the opening.
Yeah, the opening was fantastic.
Awesome.
All of I feel like we got so many fights. It was very much a again, I keep using this expression particularly in regards to Mario, but also it's a love letter. If you grew up in Mortal Kombat, there's so many things that are in there for you, but it's also a look, we got to try to fit this into the real world somehow without this being overly ridiculous. So I felt like it really walked a very fine tightrope of, look, we want to make a Mortal Kombat movie, and there are a lot of ridiculous aspects of that game that we have to justify bringing into this very real world, but also okay, well, how do we make it so that it somewhat could exist in this world that we live in today? And I thought that they did a really good job of doing that. I thought the casting was phenomenal. There's if you're a fan of the Mortal Kombat games, that there's a lot of different directions that they can go in. They got to bring in Johnny Cage. And, there are a lot of different cool things with that, which that they sort of teased bringing him in. So the casting of that's going to be crucial. But, man, I love that movie. I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, it came out very much during the pandemic, but that was one of the first big HBO Max theater movies at the same time.
Yeah.
Did they do that theatrically?
That was part of the whole day and date thing. And it opened well. I remember it opening well, but I remember for the junket, them insisting that I go screen it in a theater and just loving it. And I remember that opening weekend when it opened on HBO Max.
We had the director on, right? I believe we had the director on.
Did we have the director on?
I feel like we did. Look. There's a little card in the top corner if we did. I feel like we did.
Pretty sure we did.
Yeah.
We did a lot of interviews.
Yes. Yes, he was great. I'm remembering now. Yeah. I sometimes get confused if I edited our interview or one that Cinema Blend did themselves, and I'm I feel like that was for our show. That's a great movie. I do like that movie.
Love that movie.
That is really good.
I'd like to quick, the one that was going to be my answer before I remembered Mortal Kombat was the Silent Hill big screen adaptation.
Nice.
Does a really great job of, if you played that game on PlayStation 1, particularly the first one, there's such a mood that movie captures. So I
saw some love for that on social. Yeah. Some people giving love for that. I'll quickly go before we throw to Sean's pick. I typically go for the nostalgia pick with my favorites are the ones that I was obsessed with.
Sure.
Not a beloved movie, very firmly planted in the video game movies are bad category for a lot of people. But a special movie to me is the Resident Evil.
Dude, love that. Dude, the scene with the lasers.
So he stole that from The Cube, but I love that he stole that from The Cube. It's a great scene.
I love the first Resident Evil. I totally forgot about that.
It is so good. I think the horror in it is great. Like I think it stands on its own. The Cube scene is fantastic. If you haven't seen the movie The Cube, you should. That is. I mean, I'm not. No accusations here. I think it's a great thing to steal. Good filmmakers steal. Good artists.
But that is the memory of that movie that I think about the first time I think about that film.
That's a scene in the horror movie.
Great score.
When someone gets split like that.
Yeah.
Great score. I think the cast is great. I think that Michelle Rodriguez is awesome in it.
Yeah.
I love the way that it's structured with them being underground and like. Yeah.
Great movie.
I think it's really great. I also love Resident Evil Apocalypse, which is the sequel. That one they were like really.
Second one was good.
They upped the action. That one is they're not stuck underground. It's less horror, more action. It's sort of an Aliens vibe.
They fell off later on, but I did. Yeah, the first one's fun.
I feel like
I
think they botched Nemesis.
Yeah,
I'll give them credit.
Nemesis is such a great Resident Evil character, and
But I like that fight, and I like the action in that. In that movie. I think what I will give it credit, you're saying they kind of fell off after that. I don't totally disagree, but what I'll say is they're unapologetically themselves, all those movies.
Sure.
Like it definitely created this original visual style and tone. And
they're like the underworld movies to me. Just kind of like they were first two were awesome. I
would give the similar to the it's you either love it or you don't in a similar way that you love the shtick of the Fast movies. I think that the Resident Evil in a very different way, but in its own way, creates a shtick that is uniquely its own.
Sure.
And also I think Paul W.S. Anderson is.
Did he do all of them?
No, the second one he wrote, but someone else directed. I think he's done most of them after that.
Paul Thomas Anderson directed the second one, actually.
Yeah, it's very. So that's why.
Well, PTA, you botched Nemesis.
Yeah, PTA.
But I think he's underrated as a director because he's made some of my favorite films. He made Soldier. He made Event Horizon. Made the original Mortal Kombat.
Event Horizon is one of the scariest films I've ever seen in my life.
Did you guys ever watch Death Race?
Oh yeah, with
fantastic
with
Jason Statham.
Yes. Statham.
Yeah, I love that movie,
dude. Event Horizon. I still have nightmares from Event Horizon. I saw that in theaters in '97.
Dude, Sam Neill in that movie, man.
Sam Neill when he's in that crawl space and his dead wife keeps like popping up. But there's a shot in that movie where there's a guy on a ceiling who's been killed and his body's like opened with those like hooks hanging his skin up. Fishburne's great in that too. That's a great movie, Event Horizon. Man.
Dude, we used to get a lot more space horror movies.
R-rated, but like Sunshine, man. Sunshine was awesome. Danny Boyle.
It's kind of funny. That's how it works. Yeah. I mean, you had the sort of 80s with the alien phenomenon that it was, and then it just turns into a bunch of alien movies, which is fun, but is what it is.
Sunshine, when they use that Adagio and D minor track, whatever
Sunshine
that piece
is one
of music,
of my favorite movies. One of my favorite.
That movie is incredible. Isn't Chris Evans in that?
Chris Evans is in that.
Yeah,
he's great in it. And so is what's his name? Great character actor. I think he plays The Rock's brother in like Hobbs and Shaw. Is that him? Is that the same guy?
Yeah, from Training Day.
Let me see. Cillian Murphy's in that too.
Yeah. Cillian Murphy is great in it. Rose Byrne is great in it. Hiroyuki Sanada is in it. We were just Michelle Yeoh is in it. Such a great cast. Benedict Wong.
Michelle Yeoh.
I could have swore. I feel like Cliff Curtis. Yes, Cliff Curtis is in it.
He's great.
Dude. He's an incredible
underrated actor. Yeah.
Dude. The scene with him and Ethan Hawke in the bathroom and Training Day is phenomenal.
Oh.
Let's throw really quickly to Sean's pick. I don't know what he picked, so I'll let the kids at home.
Please be the original Super Mario Brothers movie.
Have fun. Come on, Bob Hoskins.
Hey guys, it's Sean, and I'm playing this week's blend game, which is #VideoGameBlend, and Gabe kept the parameters around it very loose. And so I'm not going with a traditional adaptation of an existing video game. I'm going with a movie that relies very heavily on the presence of a video game as its catalyst, and that is Matthew Broderick's film War Games from when I was growing up in the 1980s. This is back when people were trying to figure out how to make video games compelling and cool, and you forget that there were games that didn't have significant graphics and didn't have, deep plots and mythology that you could follow through. Sometimes it was just a series of questions that were asked by the computer that the person had to answer properly. I love the fact that Broderick plays this version of the teenage hacker, who was a really popular character throughout the 1980s and sometimes into the early 1990s, where somebody would get into some level of a computer that they weren't supposed to be into and gained access to some secrets that they obviously were not supposed to be privy to. And with war games, we get to the point where he has hacked into some sort of missile defense system that, you know, if it's allowed to play out, is going to launch a version of World War III. And it's extremely believable. It takes you from his suburban bedroom all the way through to the remote hideout of the original computer programmer, and all the way through to, I want to say it's like the Department of Defense. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But Matthew Broderick has to make the video game essentially play against itself, so that it can get to the point where there's a stalemate and there's no winner essentially, and it'll shut down the program. I think Ready Player One has a lot to thank War Games for. War Games sort of laid down some groundwork for Ready Player One to, like, it walked so that Spielberg can run, essentially, right? And it's just a fun little throwback. I showed it to the boys recently. It still holds up really well. They got a kick out of the outdated technology and machinery that exists inside of it. But at the time, I'm telling you, it was exciting as all hell get out. So when I think about video game movies, and I think about movies that are driven by some form of video game adaptation, because most adaptations are so bad. It's just so bad. I looked over the list to try to find one that I really loved. And I mean, the closest I came was maybe Uncharted, which I liked a lot, but it wasn't great. So I went outside the realm and picked a movie that had a video game at its heart, and that's War Games. So I'm excited to find out what the guys have chosen. I will be reporting from Star Wars Celebration on my social media. So make sure you follow me there, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Sean. Again, Sean is in London right now.
Don't say thank you. We don't know what his pick is. It could be terrible.
Oh, it could be terrible. Yeah. Yeah. If not, it's just, there's a moment of silence and we're back. Moment of silence and we're back. Our audience picks this week. We have a few. Ariel Pace says Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, the one with Alicia Vikander, because I also don't know how to say her name, but
I'm going to double check this right now.
Miss Vikander, the wonderful Vikander. Michael Nip says the original Mortal Kombat. Friend of the show, Ash Crossan, writes in with the new Mortal Kombat on Jake's side.
Wow, my girl.
And Ruby says Hitman, which I believe is Timothy Olyphant.
Timothy Olyphant. Yeah,
loved that. Was a great one too.
I remember loving that. Yeah,
he's great. Kev, did you find it? Oh, he's looking at it for next week. While he's looking for that, write in with hashtag horror comedy blend and let us know your favorite horror comedy movie.
Interesting.
Here is Alicia saying it.
Okay.
Here we go.
I mean, I believe you.
No, but I think both of us are kind of wrong. It's like, listen.
Is it because she's...
Here goes.
I'm Alicia Vikander, and
it's Alicia. So I was saying Alicia.
I'm Alicia Vikander, and
okay, so it's like Charlize Theron. So it's technically Alicia Vikander. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great actress. Either way.
Yeah.
Whether you can say her name or not. Oscar-winning actress. I kind of forget about that.
How did you say it, Jake? How did you ever think?
He just gives the initial. He says A Vikander, and everything that he does when he's on TV. Everything.
I think mine was Alicia. It's actually Alicia. So let's just to clarify that, just to give her proper credit.
So again, next week, write in hashtag horror comedy blend. You can send us that on Twitter, or you can email us realblend@cinemablend.com to let us know your favorite film in the horror comedy genre. And I'll let you if you write in and you feel like you're bending the rules on what a horror comedy is, just write up a little explanation. You know, I'll let you defend it. Have fun with it. Our next premium episode drops on Monday. That's just going to be Kevin and myself, which should be fun. Kevin, I don't know what we're going to do yet, but it's going to be fun. We're probably going to talk about Oppenheimer. You know, who knows?
I am down.
I think we actually already did that episode. I think you and I already did an episode where we just talked about Oppenheimer. But
let's do it again.
Until next week, you can find us on socials at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV. I guess I have to say this, at Sean_O'Connell, even though he's not here technically. At Gabe Kovac, and the show is at Real Blend. But until next time,
the movie critic,
Oppenheimer,
Barbie,
Oppenheimer,
beach off.